You might have noticed that the AI models that you're using are not always more intelligent as new models get released. In fact, sometimes you might even think that they are less intelligent. How could this be? The AI companies use what they call benchmarks to test their models and to demonstrate to the public that the model is better than the version before. Sometimes these benchmarks tests don't tell the full story and in fact might even miss the point. Here's some of the reasons. This is what's happening. So the benchmarks tests themselves don't measure intelligence. They're measuring an interpretation of intelligence. They're measuring a narrow understanding of a certain aspect of something rather than a full breadth understanding of a whole subject or how different subjects might fit in together to produce a certain understanding of something. The models are getting better at this, but they are definitely not there, and the benchmarks tests definitely do not show this. So a benchmarks test might show that a model is good at, say, maths, but that doesn't mean that it's good at writing a letter, as an example. The AI benchmarks test is the second reason. Benchmark tests might show that a model is learnt some information well and can regurgitate that information well, but does it understand that information? The answer is, of course, no. And, without calling you an AI model, of course, you might remember your high school history exam where you had to memorize a bunch of facts about, the Roman Empire. And those facts might have led you to be able to pass that exam. In fact, you might have done very, very well in that exam. Doesn't mean that you can discuss comfortably the Roman Empire. Doesn't mean you can relate the Roman Empire to modern politics or modern society. Possibly not. And that's because there's a difference between knowing facts about something and being able to use those facts to draw new opinions and conclusions about your current circumstances. And the AI models are, of course, very, very bad at being able to do this. They will get better again. The next is this. The benchmarks can be trained to learn particular things that the creators know will pass those benchmarks tests very well. So they can be trained to run those tests, basically. And if you're training to run those tests, then you're not training on everything. And in fact, you might even drop some particular things in order to do better on those tests. So they're intentionally, in that case, or maybe not intentionally, but certainly that gets deceptive. And the last point is this, and there's probably a few others that you could think of, but the last point is this. We're measuring progress that's been long achieved. So a test might show a greater than 90% understanding of a particular subject or a greater than 90% result in a particular subject, which is great, but does 90.1 actually make a real world difference to the way you use those models and the way you understand them? Probably not. It might look good on a test and it might look really good on a graph showing, hey, we've improved our model this much, but that doesn't make a lot of difference to the way you might write an email or get an agent to collate what meetings you have on today. It doesn't really translate that way. Here's the point. AI might not be moving as fast as those benchmark tests indicate. You have to understand what those graphs are actually showing. However, there might be some things that those tests aren't measuring that your AI is doing really, really well on. And anybody who's using AI for coding at the moment will probably be able to say that. The models are great at writing applications and are improving noticeably from model to model. It's up to us to actually use the models and understand how they are in day-to-day application, and that is the real test.